Wear my glasses. And then we can get started. We have one item. Bozina may have to leave before we get finished with our discussion, that, item number 2, because it's her son's birthday. So she has a good reason. All right, let's get started here. Okay, this is our Landmarks Land Use Committee, Monday, March 6th, 2023, and let's do the roll call. So Teague here, Vieira, McKeeva,
Here.
Tesla,
Here.
Drinkwater,
Here.
Indig, Kaminsky,
Here.
Canton,
Here.
Kelterborn, Myers,
Here.
Michelli,
Here.
Rabbi Niederman, Nieves, Sofer, Vega. Oh, he told me he wasn't going to be able to make it tonight. Weiser, Andrews, Berger, Kowachka,
Here.
Naplatarski.
Dear Del, I need to leave at about 7:30. I'm sorry for
It's okay.
a family event.
Stone.
Here.
Right. Okay. So, first item is a landmarks item, and this is regarding 136 Franklin Street. And I'm going to let Trina take over.
And I'm going to ask if the presenters are here and can get started.
Yep, we're both here, ready to go.
Great. Great. So please proceed.
Okay. We're architects from Kushner Studios. We're proposing a one-story extension at the first floor of 136 Franklin Street between Milton and Greenpoint Avenue, Milton Street and Greenpoint Avenue. Are we able to share our screen? Yep, we are. Good. Super. I think most of you have seen this previously from the last time we presented. We have added a couple of renderings based on a discussion with landmarks. This page is just showing a couple of shots. This is the view from Milton Street as of last August. Obviously, we all know that there's an outdoor structure that was put up without permits. I think 130.
Oh, 130.
130 Franklin Street, and then obviously you can't see it from Greenpoint Avenue because we have that one-story addition there. Again, this is the same shot from Milton Street as of 12/8/22. Then we have our photo montage illustrating the visibility or lack thereof of the extension from Milton Street. We basically have removed this white structure, assuming it's going to be removed, and are representing what the view of our extension would look like from Milton Street with the existing fences. You basically see the very little bit of the top of it, and then you would see the guardrail that is going around the top of that extension. The next page is a little bit of a bigger shot. Hopefully that is a little clearer. And then this dotted line here represents if this fence between 128 and 130 Franklin Street has to be lowered to 6 feet. Currently it's at an 8-foot height. Landmarks is looking into whether or not they're making 130 lower that fence as well. Again, the view is very minimal, we think, and I think the color of the guardrail was meant to basically mimic or match the fire escapes that are on the back of these buildings. So it's very not prominent and inconspicuous from Milton Street. And then we just have some other photos of the mock-up that was done, and showing that you couldn't see the mock-up right now based upon, you know, that structure at 130. And then these are just some additional views of the conditions at the backyard of 136 Franklin Street. This is looking towards Greenpoint Avenue. This is looking towards Milton. This is looking directly with your back to the building, and then obviously the view of the rear facade of 136 Franklin Street. And then this is just some more other shots around the neighborhood. And then these are our plans showing that extension, showing the door that we're adding to the second floor to give the residential unit access to the terrace. And then these are the rear elevation. We're proposing a stucco finish on the extension. This color, the colors never kind of come through, but the goal is to match the other red brick that the rear facades have, and then obviously the black paint to match the other fire escapes and fire balconies within the space. And then the door from the residential unit would, again, in an effort to match the off-white or cloud white, as this is called, of the color of the existing back rear facade of the building. And then this is just a section to show a little bit more information. And then this is, again, sorry, that was an elevation, and this is in section, showing a comparison of existing and then proposed. And that's it. Let me just go back to maybe this one.
So I just want to make a correction. I think I said 176. It's 136.
36.
It is 136, correct.
You know, when you guys presented, this is Trina, and when you guys presented to the full board, there were a number of questions from committee members, board members and committee members about the backyards, and not just the side view from Milton Street, which does seem inconspicuous to me, but what we had asked specifically about was what's called the donut, which is the sort of the coming together of the backyards in a historic district, and how by putting this extension, you're basically going into what sort of the green space of the combined backyards, what one calls a historic donut. And you had said when you presented that no one from LPC had brought that up, and we had asked at the committee meeting for you to speak to them about it. And I'm wondering whether there was any feedback from them about it.
I mean, there wasn't any feedback more so than bringing it up and noting that, you know, this situation we're right next to two buildings that have full extensions. Obviously, in this space on the first floor isn't used by obviously the residential units on 2, 3, and 4. So there wasn't much, I would say, I guess, feedback from them on that point topic.
Okay, I know that there are other committee members that have more to say about it than I do, and I'm wondering, especially Sante, if you want to speak up.
Sure, Trina. Hi, everybody. Thank you for the presentation. I want to echo what Trina has just pointed on, but I believe Steve and me, we did it both. But it's a long community story, actually, especially with the donut. And the donut, for who doesn't know, was a very important feature in the design of the building, of the 19th century building. And it became even more important even later on in the 1900s. And it was definitely a very important space, open space, when hygienical conditions were very low, but has become always a very important feature and has been very regarded by Landmark despite the events that have been happening, many controversial events sometimes, big community battles, but it's something and Landmark's protected. And in this portion of the block of the Greenpoint, Franklin, and Milton is pretty intact, except one event of which you remember, which was 98 Greenpoint Avenue, which has been the first wound to this donut. It was reduced. It was controversial at the time. You all know that the chair of LPC at the time was not a preservationist, was somebody who was coming in a very particular political moment from city planning. And so there wasn't a lot of sensitivity at the time. A council member, Steve Levin, at the time, when he was 98 Greenpoint Avenue, I was there, Steve was there, a lot of residents from the Milton Street Block Association attended the public hearing at LPC. I won't tell this history because it's important, because the community battled against that. Trina, you remember at the time I wasn't a board member, but we came with a community with both at the meeting, Community Board 1 with big poster, and I know that at that time the committee wasn't fully aware. Bosina had said to the community, oh, we thought they said it was as of right, but to clarify, these applications are never as of right. Of course, they can be filed with DOB. You can change the certificate of occupancy of the space, but it needs approval of the community and needs approval from Landmark. And so this is the first portion of that story of the battle. Then going back to the why is this important? If it would be an isolated backyard space when there is not a donut, could be questionable, but may not be that relevant. But from an historic point of view, Milton Street, in this presentation here, exactly on this picture, the building you can see on this scale, but there is actually a very important building. Even when they came from the Polonese, the building of reference in terms of height, but also in terms of historic importance, was the building that you can see from here. You cannot see right now because there is a scaffold. Fortunately, they're going through a renovation of this terracotta clay facade building. The building is the Mechanic and Trader Bank of Brooklyn building at 144 Franklin and corner of Greenpoint Avenue. It's a Renaissance revival, Romanesque revival, has some fantastic arches. The name maybe doesn't recall anything, but I'm sure that you know the building very well. Even if you don't live in Greenpoint, you have passed by. It's probably one of the most beautiful buildings. And I've been living on Milton. I'm a resident of Milton Street, and always it's been always a fantastic view to pass from Milton. And from that fence, unfortunately, as you just said, one of the fences was rebuilt high by the bar that opened there. Then later on, the bar put that white structure, erected a steel structure illegally, got a violation, got a full stop work order. I don't know if the stop work order is still on the window of the bar. They can use it, but it's another presence that wasn't supposed to be there. But that streetscape, that's what it is. It's a streetscape. Through there, you have a view, and so normally nothing should be there. But beyond of that, this from an architectural point of view, from an urbanistic point of view, the space are very green space. And I know that Steve has pulled out a Google Earth map. I don't know if it is the case. Maybe if Steve can kindly maybe share that with everybody. And maybe you took some picture in a time of the year where probably all the leaves are gone. I sent to Steve also a few pictures and to Trina where there are trees are 3-story tall on the Milton portion. It's a T, and that T, it's a very valuable green space, and I have a backyard myself. So our neighbors of mine have backyard. We really value the the green space, the value of green space, especially at this time where we're talking about climate changes. And so it's a multiple component. There are multiple components in why it is valuable and why it should be altered. Also, your application indicate a series like there is another extension on Franklin. It's actually a 5 feet, 4 feet wood deck that literally has a stair to have a backyard. Is not really an extension. Yeah, it's that one with the umbrella on top. It's not a commercial space, and I believe we advocate personally. The community has advocated to preserve and value the importance of this green space, and of course, little by little, every time there is an application here, certain the residential building cannot file for any extension, but the commercial can. But this is creating, especially because Greenpoint Avenue has a C24 with an overlay. So if everybody will do that, we're going to lose very soon. One of the probably the most valuable and pretty intact donuts here in this very small historic district. I believe that's all what I should say for now. This is not about reading about the design of the railing. This is about continue to say no, because many of the member of the LPC at the commission, they value very much the donuts. Other member, they didn't. But even Greenpoint Avenue was reduced in scale, but this is even more visible because this is visible from Milton. And even a railing, if it doesn't look, but they're occupying on top of a roof, you can put any piece of furniture, it's going to alter that streetscape. And any extension that you see there, because they were historical warehouse. Actually, the building you can see in this picture, where you can see the Revel, that building back at the right, it wasn't there. That was built in 2000, probably in 15, 14. So I remember that being an empty lot. You remember too, Trina, from Greenpoint Avenue, next to the little building, there was a barber place. And that's originally, historically, was access. That lot was an access to this historic warehouse, which was a mix also of manufacturing at that time.
Sante, let's let someone else speak first.
That's it.
Okay, thanks.
That's it for now. Maybe somebody else want to say something. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other committee members? I want to, oh, please, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, first, just from a presentation standpoint, I thought we would have more extensive renderings other than, the railing view from Milton. I thought we would at least see more, a detailed drawing or a 3D rendering of, what the extension might look like from the donut perspective, from, behind the building. So from just an appropriateness of fitting in with, the rest of those rear yards and the other buildings, it's hard to imagine what's going on there from the drawings that you provided. So I feel like we're kind of doing this blind. And then, kind of echo Sante's concerns. First of all, I think the extensions that are on Milton and beyond, I feel like it's a bit overstated. And folks do a Google Earth for 136 Franklin. Those areas just totally lush with green and trees and shrubs, and the 98 Greenpoint Avenue extension sticks out like a sore thumb. So, and I'm just worried about precedent. So we have 98 Greenpoint, and then we have the legal one, and then on Milton, and then if this was to go through, I feel like it just be kind of a domino effect where these commercial spaces are filling in their backyards. So I don't know. I wish you could see just an idea of what it will look like. It's just going to be a stucco block essentially, or is it going to have windows? Is it, I
No,
don't,
it'll just be stucco, but you won't see it because there's, I believe, that existing fence. Let me see, sorry. Yeah, there's an existing fence here that goes at least like maybe that's 10 feet high. Because it has that little curb base, and then
Yeah.
so you won't even see it from the donut.
yeah. Well, at least on the ground floor, but if you live in an upper floor, and you look down on there, then you will definitely see it.
Sure.
Um,
But you won't see, yeah, I'm just saying you won't see the stucco.
yeah, I see what you're saying. Also, have you considered, doing something along terraforming the roof, just adding, greenery, just even, from a, from the climate standpoint, but also just for efficiency standpoint, adding like a green roof or adding small trees and shrubs and that sort of thing. And I think it would definitely soften something potentially going there that's just, concrete and stucco.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that our client wouldn't be against having planters and having greenery up there for sure. I mean, the
Yeah.
use of it's like, where right now the second floor doesn't have a rear yard, that they can go out and use. And now they will have an outdoor space that they can use.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, okay, that's all for me.
Any other
Thank you.
committee members?
Oh, yes, I would love to make some comments. It's
Okay.
Katie. In my car. Okay, so I do not think this is a good idea. We do have climate change upon us. We have hot summers. We need all the backyard and real green that we can get in terms of cooling and oxygen. Also in terms of drainage, porous surfaces, and planters are not the same thing as a backyard. Precedent. It's like dominoes. You do this, it's the next one, the next one, the next one, the next one. Not just this donut, but donuts all over the place. So it shouldn't happen, in my opinion. It's commercial, but also in a sense it's residential because you have the roof. So you're adding to a residential space, not technically, but in a way. But that's ultimately probably one of the purposes, is to, enlarge the residential space into the roof. And I can just see owners all over the place wanting to do that. And certainly stairs can be put from, a first floor, second floor apartment into a backyard. I have the same thing in my dwelling. I think this is not a good idea. Well, that's what I have to say.
One thing that I do want to add, part of my due diligence I always do is I check in with the Historic District Council, and they did not have a problem with this proposal. They thought that it was one story, that it wasn't an issue, and they said that they reviewed the proposal for rear yard and rooftop additions as standalone proposals. We do not have a blanket position on these, but rather it depends on existing accretions in the donut and on the size, bulk, and massing of the addition. We are on the record of supporting many rear yard additions, but generally oppose full height and full width additions. In this case, our committee didn't comment because the one-story rear yard addition in a row that already has one-story balconies, so it seems within the scale of other rear yard accretions in the immediate area.
It's interesting because, here we are trying to think as a city and as a world about climate change and what we can do to mitigate that. And now we're taking away green surfaces, green places, And putting in hard surfaces, as a city, it should not be allowed. I mean, we're going to build on vacant lots, but we don't need to take up the backyards that we have or the front yards that we have either. And there should be a moratorium on it. If we really are taking seriously, there should be legislation about it, actually. If we're really taking seriously about what's going on, that should, that would be very forward thinking.
So I have a question, Trina, Dell here.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not understanding. Is this taking up the entire backyard space?
Yeah, which in a commercial building, which this has, it's commercial, ground floor commercial, they're allowed to.
Yes, and that I understand. And why is it then that this is coming before us as an issue for us, since as a commercial space, they are allowed to do
It's
this?
as of right, but it's the view from Milton Street, really, that they, which is what the proposal was kind of all about, with showing us how you can see it through when you look above the garage on Milton Street. And because that's what why Landmarks kicked it back, didn't approve it at the staff level, why they kicked it back to the community board. And when we're pointing out the issues with the donut, with the rear yard oval, that's our addition. But by them having to come back to us, it's opened up this issue that our committee has found important, has traditionally found important.
Yeah, interesting. So we're dealing with a situation with where the city actually is allowing developers to just close up green space.
Yeah. And the only reason we can comment on it is this view that we're looking at right now.
Right.
Also, Trina, what we said before, that the donuts is regarded and LPC, in good time of LPC, because LPC went through good time where there has been a lot of the members of the commission, which have been really focusing on what it was the original mission of the Landmarks Commission to preserve. And donuts, actually, they've been preserved. Just Google up. There's so many battle community and cases. And so also the donuts, even if there was no vision of here and it was in the middle of Greenpoint Avenue block, they would have come to us and will have to go through the same scrutiny. The other components that you have mentioned, which is even more important, is not just the donuts. It's a donuts is this spatial visibility. It's a donut with a T. And that building you right now you see with the scaffold, normally without the scaffold, you know the building very well. It's a beautiful historic building. Probably one of the icon of Greenpoint, together with the Astro building.
But Sante, is this a building lot? Right now it's a garage, but what we're looking at in the forefront, could that actually be a building?
That could be a building, plus on top the railing, plus the planters, the things, and you're not going to have that vision anymore. And then is also the loss, where we said before, again, I invite you in another time for the future to search. Donut is defined as a very important feature in 19th century design of building in New York City. Landmarks has a big argument about the donut, how intact is the donut, and the preservation of the donuts in New York City.
Okay, does someone want to make a recommendation, make a resolution?
I just want to say something else. Personally, I think it's heartbreaking that the city will allow developers at this point in time to actually just completely obliterate open backyard spaces, even though I know we want commercial space, especially since we're finding so much commercial space is just left, lying fallow and not even being used. And so it's a question, I guess, of how important it is at this point in time with this development in the city. That being said, and I do agree with Katie that there really should be legislation saying, you know what, we can't afford to get rid of any more of our open space. That being said, sounds to me like we're upset that they're taking up the space, but that's not really the issue before us. That I get the feeling we're actually looking for some maybe minor visibility issue so that in order to stop it, but
Well,
I don't know. This is not
visibility issue that
clear.
triggered having them come to us. I mean, this is,
Yes.
they
Yes.
recognize the visibility issue.
Right. So if
Also, Dale, if I can add something else, I mean, if for us, I mean, it is for me, it is for Katie, and definitely has been for a community which is not here before, but Steve was with us, and we were 20 people, right, that we attend the public hearing in person, this back in 2017. Now, and Steve Levin was with me. Steve Levin, I can testify, you could call him and ask, was there having even an argument with the chair of LPC? Everybody recognized, oh, we have council member Steve Levin here. And he was even mischaracterized. And Steve Levin got up and he stand up, he said, I am mischaracterized. And unfortunately, he went in that direction. So I was saying historically, even the council member came with the community to try to protect these donuts. So there was an attempt. Now, the fact that the LPC, I don't know what they're going to do today, but I definitely commissioner have different vision when they are there. The member of the commission have different vision. How the board votes is very fundamental in encourage this member to support certain idea, you know? So I believe it's green space are very important. I have a yard, I take care of it. I have 30 feet tall trees, you know, and it costs to maintain them and to cut them. And I believe other neighbors do too, you know, and the moment that we don't have that anymore, and this building especially, was a residential. I understand historically was when it was built a commercial, but it was a residential. So a residential has been lost. It was an affordable residential. I knew the people were staying there. And now it's commercial. So I believe the developer is getting some benefit to return it to be a commercial space, which is far, you know, definitely goes for $10,000 a month rent. But now if you expand it of other 1,000 square feet there, 800 square feet.
Sante, that's beside the point. You can't go.
Yeah,
there.
that's
understand, you know,
another.
So I would like to hear what other people think, because again, my feeling is and I'm not saying yay or nay on this. I think it's a difficult question. Yeah, I get the feeling that if we say no, it's really more to make a statement to the city that we don't care that a commercial space can obliterate a backyard, a green space. We're just against it, and we'll use any excuse we can come up with to try to show our opposition. Now, is that a bad thing? Is that a stupid thing to do if we feel strongly about it? No, I don't think it is, but I think we need to, if I'm correct, we need to understand what we're doing. And if I don't know if I'm being clear to everybody, but I would really like some quick feedback from other members, because a lot of people are just staying silent. I'd like to have some sense of just where you'd like to go on this, because this is in my opinion, this is really more a statement, a policy statement that we would be making, knowing that the historic that the council probably has no problem with it. So
Del,
can I get some opinions? Yeah.
sure. I will share my opinion. I'm not that passionate about it, which is why I didn't have one. But since you're asking, is it possible for us to, approve this in terms of landmarks, but make the statement that we disagree with the overall policy? Because I think, you know, for thinking about it from a real estate perspective, when you buy a property and it's commercial and you're using it for that purpose, and that's what that's what's allowable, then you are buying it with that in mind. And I think it's kind of unfair to the applicants to deny it, given that that is what our city has decided for commercial spaces. So I think it's, yeah. So I'm not sure that I agree. While I agree we shouldn't take our backyards, I feel like it's unfair to these guys to do that. So, I would say that from a landmarks perspective, which is what we're supposed to be doing here, that we don't have a problem with it from that perspective, if that's the case, but we do have a problem with it from another, but we will, approve it. So perhaps the message can get conveyed.
Yeah. Anyone else? And can we do that? Your question? Of course. We can do anything we want. We can say anything we want. And that is certainly a possibility of saying, we understand that, technically speaking, commercial development can completely take away our backyard space, and we are asking the city to redo the regulations and to in the future to change that legislation.
However, our letter is going to landmarks, and they really only care about the landmarks part of this.
Right. So, but this would be that's right. But
I have
it
to
would
say,
be a way of.
I'm of two minds about this, because the residential end of the donut is intact for the most part, except for the building that Sante mentioned that that incurs into it. These are commercial buildings that have the right to go to their full Franklin Street, and that commercial. You still have the oval for the. I mean, you don't have the T end of it if you build out into there, but the residential, the area between Greenpoint and Milton is still an intact, which at this end of the street, it's not. The other end of the street, it's not the case. But you still have an intact donut between the residential areas.
Yeah. And
also Greenpoint Avenue, Trina, because it's of the commercial overlay. Many are residential right now, but they could be returned into commercial. And if everybody will, because the backyard, you see, they were always available to the tenants. Historically, what happened, the latest trend, that they've been changing the door and they've been denied access. So they've incorporated the backyard as to be fully commercial. So always, the backyard were always an amenity for the building. Even if they were when they were commercial storefront, but it was only the indoors commercial space. So that's the impact could have extend also far more into the Greenpoint Avenue and the few other now residential.
Saying to let it go on Franklin Street, you may lose the.
And they will continue on. So, and then it will not be one episode in a wrong political time, even if it was fought hard, it would be a second, a third, and we're never going to stop that. And the donut, so, we're saying, yes, we want to break this component, but you see, the green space, it is the donut, and the donut, it's an historical feature. So by protecting the landmark, you are protecting the green space, which we value so much.
I'd like to add in a possibility. Thinking about what Sante's proposing here, but I'd also like to add something additional. That we write a letter to the council member, requesting that he consider legislation about any future backyard, being removed. We could do that as a community board, I would think.
Yeah, I don't see why we couldn't do that, and it wouldn't necessarily just be. Is it city legislation or is it state? Do we know?
City.
Okay, so
I would think it would be city legislation.
Yeah, I would add to that, writing city planning as well to offer
city planning and both
zoning
of our
or text
councils.
amendment
Yep.
to incentivize these types of properties to preserve their, green spaces in back.
I think that's a great idea, no matter which way we vote tonight.
And
And
I say both of our council people, not just one
yes,
councilman.
absolutely. I'd also just like to add, and I understand what you're saying, Corey, in terms of them buying this with the impression that they could do this. But I'd just like to put in here that if I bought that building, I wouldn't do that because I would value that backyard and what it means in terms of our whole community and our earth and a small footprint. I just want to put that in there for what it's worth.
and
Can
also,
we have some? Can we hear from some other people? I think
Yeah,
you've made
sorry.
your points clear. Anyone else is because we're all going to vote on this tonight. So I think if we could hear from some other people.
It's Mike.
Yeah, Mike.
So I just want to be clear. My question is, are we trying to preserve the sight line, or are we trying to preserve the softscape, the dirt and the drainage and the green space? And then add on to that is, say they don't do the add-on, but I plant a giant tree in the yard. I've added green space, but I've blocked the sight line.
Yeah, well, that's a very good question, Mike. And again, why is this so squirrely? Because technically speaking, commercial developers can take up the entire backyard space. But we just happen to now have a situation where there's some of the members of the committee would like to hang their hat on the fact that the sight line might be affected. But really in their hearts, they don't want the space to be able to be taken up.
If somebody wants to pave their backyard with asphalt, we can't stop them, even in a landmark zone.
Right.
No.
Right. That's right. And that's a good point.
Della, I want to ask before courtesy to Steve, because he has some of that picture, but last time I tried, but with my computer, I have some problem. Maybe to give a sense of how lush and green and how many trees there are there, to give an idea, because this doesn't give justice to really what is happening in the extended donut part. I don't know if still could do that, because it would give a sense how green and how many trees there are, how much nature there is inside there.
Steve, can you share that image from Google Earth? Or Joanna, if I sent it to you, could you bring it up on the screen?
We need to stop
Sure.
Yeah, well, I can. It's just the architects just need to stop
Okay.
sharing, and then I can share.
I'll do that
Okay,
right
so
now.
let's do that. I
Steve,
don't want to put people on the spot, but if anybody else feels
Steve, could you share some of the photos
like to
from the
share.
roof too?
136 is here on, where my cursor is. That's Franklin on the right.
So where is the lot that we're looking at?
It's where the
it-
pin is.
Where the pin is? Okay, I
Yeah,
got it. Yeah.
over here.
I see. But, and it looks like the buildings next to it are also blocking.
This is a one-story on Greenpoint Avenue, which is the two-lane street in the foreground. There's a one-story, it's actually a little grocery store that you can look over and see into that space. And on Milton, which is the other side, there's a garage, and that's the image that we were looking at before on the developer screen.
Right. So I see what you mean, Trina, by how the residential parts are all have the open space. And it's just the T part.
Yeah.
That seems to be, that's how
The other
all,
thing, one thing to also think about, which I've thought about, is if they're not allowed to build their building, they could put a bar in on that, or a bar or restaurant with an outdoor space that becomes a community headache where
Yeah.
people are in the backyard.
Also, Trina, to tap into what you're saying, I want to remind you that the community board, back when we came with a block association, and this was something was by Rich Mazer, clause there. It was called Budin. The community board vote to protect the sanctity of the historic district against that liquor license at Budin. And we went all the way to the New York State Liquor Authority in front of the Chair Rosen was at that time, and it was denied. Then Fulgurances at 132 Franklin signed an agreement with the block association, and they're not using the backyard. The only one is using is during COVID, went directly to New York State Liquor Authority, is the one that built the illegal structure and got a violation. And so I want to say that there has been recognition, even people who came to apply for liquor license, they came to agreement with the community board, a recognition that the sanctity of this donut and the fact that it's predominantly residential. I know it's out of context, but as you mentioned,
No, that's good to know. But I think, you guys, we need to move on unless.
Yeah, does somebody have something? Does somebody have a motion?
I usually have strong feelings. I don't have strong feelings here. So if someone else wants to make a motion, then we can vote.
I make a motion to disapprove it and to mention the importance of the historic donut, especially on this small historic district. And these are the main point. And also there is a point of it's the oldest streetscape from Milton to Greenpoint Avenue. Of course, a tree could block it, but it's the idea. A building could block the view. Maybe it's not that much. Somebody else is going to put something else on the terrace, but mostly the green space, the donut. I will make a motion to disapprove.
Can you add to your motion, Sante, what Katie had said, the letter as part of the same motion?
Oh, yes, and also to add to the motion where we ask the board to write to our public representative, to our council member, to our borough president, and to city planning. I don't know if we didn't say city planning, to LPC.
I said city planning.
Yeah, we did say.
So we did say, and city planning, where we say that the community value these these green spaces, especially at this time of.
We're requesting legislation.
And we're requesting legislation that could perfect and maybe alter or stop.
Okay.
All right, so the vote on this would be a full denial, and then if that doesn't pass, then I would make the motion to approve, but with all those other concerns and with the letter and asking that the cities change the legislation. So, all right, we'll have a vote. Joanna, can you keep tally?
Sure.
Wait, someone has to second Sante's.
Oh yeah, is somebody going to second it? Thank you, Trina.
Is there a committee member?
I'll second it.
Katie? Okay. Okay, Joanna.
Delty,
No.
Maria Vieira, Trina McKeever,
No.
Stefan Chesler,
Is no disapprove? Like we're voting to disapprove.
Okay,
so
no
means
is
approve.
we are, no. No means we're not approving Sante's motion for a complete denial.
Okay.
So I'm when I say no, I'm not voting for that motion. I would vote to approve it, but with all of those concerns and that we have about, you know, the policy that allows the obliteration of the
We gotta
backyard.
let this go through first.
So first we have to go through this. I'm voting no, meaning I'm voting against that motion, which.
Yeah, for the clarification. Got it.
Mr. Chesler,
Yes.
Erin Drinkwater,
Yes.
Moish Endig, Bosena Kaminsky,
No.
Corey Canty,
No.
Paul Ketterborn, Adam Myers,
No.
Santa Michele,
Made the motion, yes.
Robert David Niederman, Karen Nieves, Isaac Sofer, William Vega, Simon Weiser, Michael Andrews, Keith Berger, Michael, I'm sorry, I do not want to mess up the last name.
Kowachka.
I'll abstain. Thank you.
Okay. Katie Naplasarski,
Yes.
Allison Stone,
Yes.
five no, 5 yes, and 1 abstention. The motion passes 11.
I'm not sure now, if it's a tie, what does the abstention count as? Does anyone know?
Adam?
I thought it worked against.
I think it works
Yeah,
again.
I thought it only counted as a yes once you already had the actual affirmative yeses of the majority, but I am not 100% sure about that.
I believe he supports the motion if you abstain, and that's what.
Bozina, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Okay. My husband is an attorney. I just checked with him. The motion fails because there is a tie and the abstention don't count.
I think that's correct. Adam, do you have a different sense?
No, I think that's my sense.
Yeah, I agree. It
I
fails.
believe, guys, I read it that the trick, I believe when I attend the borough president, there was an explanation this several months ago. There was a training and how we vote and what happened when we vote. So, but again, I'm not a lawyer, but this is not about what happened in a corporation. I believe specifically with our community boards. But, you know, there was a discussion about, you know, be aware when you abstain, you know, it comes that you support the motion. But again, so I'm aligned with what Adam was saying, and that's what I knew. But I will ask.
Adam is saying it goes against the motion.
No, I'm saying that it goes in you know in favor of the motion. In this case, actually, we have equal votes. So I don't know what happened with the equal votes.
Adam, it's your understanding if it's a tie that the abstention goes in favor of the motion or against it?
Well, I don't think it goes either way. I think it like doesn't get counted in either column, right? And so you're left with 50% and 50%, and I think what you need is 50% plus 1 to pass the motion.
Adam, what I understood before, but you know that needs to be looked at that. Let's say that we had they would have gone probably with the majority of the vote and become the majority of the vote, but
No, it's as if the vote didn't It's as if I didn't vote. I just Googled it. I mean, you could check it out yourself. So it's a tie according to what I'm reading here on the internet. Parliamentary Procedure for Judicial Council of California. I mean, you can find something more local if you want.
And I think the Rules of Order also
Right.
speak on it, that fails, the motion fails.
It's a tie, so I don't know if it. Yeah.
Is it possible for us to check with the, with the community board and I guess have a nail biter evening about this issue?
Who would we check with? What does that mean, check
Yeah,
with the community?
we
I don't know.
we have a
Jerry?
city, we have a city lawyer. We have usually we check with the city lawyer.
Yeah, the
I
master
know
of
if it was,
ceremonies.
I know that if it was a full board meeting and the motion was a tie, then the chair will be the one to vote at that time, but this is a committee meeting.
Mm.
And we're going to lose our quorum, aren't we? Because Bozina, don't you have to go to
Yeah.
your kid's birthday party?
The thing is, Michael, do you want to keep your vote as an abstention?
I mean, I already voted. Can I change my vote?
Well, I suppose we could vote again since it's a tie.
What happens in a tie? That's the question.
It doesn't pass.
I think it's a fail. You have to have a majority of yes
That's it.
votes.
Oh, and we have to vote, then we can have another motion.
Yeah, Del, I think the motion failed when it's tied, so we can revote the motion again and see if that will be changed, and then go to a different motion.
Right, so let's
Well,
vote
I
again.
don't think we could say that the motion changed if failed if we do not know that for sure.
Well, as far as we know, from the various people doing research, it means that the motion failed. If you can come up with a different response, if you can Google and find a different interpretation of the rules, fine.
I may suggest that we vote that motion one more time and see what happened.
I don't know.
if we could do that.
Is this the appropriate way? Then it's a way we manipulate the vote. I
Well,
believe maybe
then,
yes.
if you don't want to do that, I'm giving the motion another chance, but if not, then the research that we've done shows that that the motion failed. So then I tell you what, I'll make a motion that we approve the application with the requirement that they make that roof a green roof, and that we send the letters to city planning and to our city electeds, asking them to consider changing the legislation so that in the future, even commercial developments cannot just completely obliterate backyard space. So I make that motion. Does anybody want to second it?
Dale, excuse me. Can I say something? Because other things is that we record what happened because it's a 5/5, and this goes to the full board, and maybe will require a discussion and explaining to the full board. In the meantime, we can reevaluate because one thing is that this doesn't pass here. One thing that we're trying to adjust, that we come to a different motion compromise, of which it was the whole point, or at least for me, not to make the compromise.
So you're suggesting we leave it like this, that it's a tie, and let the full board decide what they want to decide.
And when I present it, I can also present the alternative resolution. I can present the resolution that was tied, and that I can also, in my committee report, talk about the alternative resolution that was discussed and that we were at odds about what to do. And so we left it here and then see what the full board does. Does that sound fair?
I think
So
it sounds
guys, Del, one thing is important to me. Look, I understand, because at the end of the story is what LPC is going to do. To me, what is really valuable that there is a statement for landmark, as Trina said, because that's what they care. And that statement could change the vote, or actually the way our landmark is going to approve this application. And they're going to look at that, at that point. But saying, oh, we are okay with that from a landmark point of view, but we're going to write a letter to somebody else, it doesn't change the fact that the next public hearing at the LPC. So
Can I say, we took a vote and it's a tie, whether we know what that means with one abstention. Whether we know what that means or not, that was the vote. And so it should be presented as such, tie with one abstention, unless the only way to undo that is to make a motion to vote down this, what we've.
I think that's fine. I think we can move on, and I'm fine with, does anyone object to our just presenting it to the full board as is, as it was a tie with an abstention? And so it's up to the full board to decide what they want to do with it, because our vote is not.
I actually
vote is
like
not
that proposal.
controlling.
And I think it's a good thing for the attention of this issue for the full board to understand our conundrum.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's
I agree.
no one objects to that, right?
Okay, my one question in my committee report, do I make note of the fact that can I describe the alternative resolution that was discussed?
Because it hasn't been, a motion wasn't made.
Okay,
right?
so
I mean, you
that,
can put in the report that was discussed, but I mean, I
We
think
did not vote on it. We didn't make
you're
a
obligated to present
Right.
the original motion, right?
right.
First, at least, right?
I could also send an email tonight to our lawyer, our city lawyer.
We're going to lose our quorum, so we're not going to be
Okay,
able
so
to vote
thank
on
you,
it.
Joanna. That's a great idea. Thank you. Thank
No,
you.
but what I probably, if Joanna send an email tomorrow, I mean, Trina, that can be perfected. So what we voted today, if let's say that the abstention counts against or whatever, or in favor of the motion, I mean, it can be
Right,
correct.
that's true. We have our vote,
Right.
and that will.
So there is that, and then there is no
So-
discussion with the board in that sense. Yes, can be discussion, but definitely you can propose it that the vote passed if we stand like that.
No, I think presented as it was a tie. I think that's, and we were unclear about the
It's a tie, that's what you
procedure.
have.
And I think that's what the board needs to hear, is that the committee was deadlocked on the issue, and then they make their vote accordingly,
I think what Sante is saying is if Joanna finds out that technically it wasn't a tie because the abstention counts in favor, which I think is not the case. I think Sante is suggesting that then if our lawyers tell us that, oh, actually the motion passed, it would still go to the board as it was really 5-4 against and 5-4 an abstention. But
Well, can he,
I do not believe that this passed. I mean, it was a tie with an abstention, and unless there's some other source that
I looked at the borough president's orientation, but it doesn't really help us. It says, under New York law, abstentions can be tricky. Generally, they count towards the majority. However, they count as no votes where so counting leads them to a tie. But in this case, it would lead it to a win. So
That's what I remember, guys, when I went to the training, because that's what I mentioned. Thank you, Steve. I tried to search for that documentation, but yeah. So in this case, it even votes.
Obviously, there's nothing. Obviously, in my opinion, Joanna has an obligation to check with our attorneys to see what the technical reading is of the vote. And you still, no matter what, when we do our reports, we tell the board how the vote broke down.
Right.
So no matter what, the board is going to know 5 were in favor, 5 were against, and there was 1 abstention.
Yeah. I need to go, everybody. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Belle and everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Good
All
night.
right.
Thank you.
So let's move on to the next item, which is, I guess it's not exactly an item. I did, as you all know, Trina did a lot of work pulling up past resolutions, past reports. I found the report that I did, which summarized not all, but many of our past policies and conditions when we had that meeting with the elected officials, the newly elected officials. And then I went through what Trina gave us, and I can't say I didn't miss anything, but I compared it to the list that I had, and then added more things that Trina had come up with.
Do you
So
think, Al, it makes sense, just as a reference, for the committee members to have the list that I put together so that people can have them for their own reference?
sure, sure.
That's kind
I
of my
mean-
goodbye present for everybody.
Yes, and I sent out the summary. It had 10 conditions, which I got from my prior report, and then from looking at the things that you
Right.
that you dug up and sent out. So so I hope everyone got the summary that I sent out, which had 10 procedures, 10 policies, 10 conditions, just quickly to integrate the affordable housing, to condition approval on having a developer take on some of the, to ameliorate some of the burdens that they are causing, which impact on some of our open space and surrounding infrastructure, to look to the community benefit agreements and work with our electeds to solidify these benefit agreements, and to see how we can put them into place in our ULURP actions, and also to explore the boundaries of what can be asked of the development in these agreements. What was number 4 was with respect to having them make contributions to their impacts on the parks and open spaces, to discuss the best process to ensure that the contributions will go directly to the Parks Department, so that it'll be used specifically for that park. For affordable housing, we would ask for 35% affordable units in the larger scale developments, and that we would start to seek information regarding what percentage of AMI is most needed in this district. Number 6 was with respect to rooftop event spaces, we've asked the city to either deny further applications or at least, at minimum, to preclude bars and amplifiers on the roofs. Number 7 was with respect to industrial and commercial special permit applications. We want a preference for local businesses and commercial tenants that will provide retail diversity, and language in the special permit precluding subsequent filing for hotel use. Number 8 was we discourage the use of fossil fuels. We encourage the use of geothermal techniques wherever feasible. The other 9 was the developers were encouraged to consider using passive house technology for further reducing the carbon footprint. And number 10, we have questioned over and over again the value of the community space floor area preferences without enforcement tools. So that's what was on. That's what I had on these 10 policies and conditions. And Trina, were there additional ones that you sent out?
No, but I think one thing that we should really ask city planning to reconsider is the special permit that they've put for the 14 blocks along the waterfront where 25 Kent is, and because especially in the current climate that we've allowed, look at what we gave to Acme Fish, to that developer. All of a sudden they've taken it through ULURP and they can build this gargantuan thing that has nothing to do with Acme, that's not tied to the original proposal. And same with the building where Greenpoint Beer and Ale was. The developers bring it through using the special permit. They get them through and then they don't build there.
So
And
you're talking about the special permit for the commercial
yeah,
industrial.
the IDAI or
building.
whatever it's
Yeah.
called.
Is it possible to make a stipulation that in a rezoning like that, if it is that the applicant does not go through the rezoning, then the approval is lost? It cannot be transferred to the new buyer?
That would be good.
That sounds like a good idea. So that
Because
if,
it's just a money generator.
Yeah, I mean,
applicant-
you know, I think that ultimately, if, you know, hypothetically Acme Fish went through and then 10 years later Acme Fish sells, then okay, you know, they did that and now they're selling it in the same use. But for them just to, you know, get a rezoning based on, you know, based on what they're going to do with it and then, you know, sell it, it seems like a business transaction.
As do the two other special permits where they didn't build.
Yeah, the one
Right.
at, was it Ghost or?
So you're saying if the applicant does not go through with getting the certificate of occupancy, then the permit would dissolve.
Yeah, then it would go back to
Back to-
previous
I
zoning.
don't know if I agree with that because especially the blocks that are in that zone,
Yeah.
because that special permit allows them to include light manufacturing instead of community space, you know, so we don't have
Right.
a William Vale situation.
Right.
So even if, you know, they don't build, someone could still come in and do that at some point where the market, you know, comes back for office space. I know Acme Fish is a different animal because it was just rezoned outright to an M15. But I don't know, I think it depends on the circumstances, like what the zoning is, but I think, yeah, because it depends. Like I say, like with the business area, I personally think it's a good thing. You know, even if, you know, the lots that they don't do anything for a while, assuming that they will at some point. Because that's why it would go back to the community space situation. So
So I guess we need more discussion on this.
yeah,
It does seem that
Yeah.
so what, do we have any sense of what's going to happen with the Acme Fish?
Is that our call or is that like a zoning lawyer thing? Like, does the permit run with the occupant or does it run with the property in perpetuity that can be passed on and sold?
I thought the property, but I'm not
I
sure.
think it's a
Okay, well,
property.
can I jump in on that?
Yes,
You
please.
know, I don't know if you saw, but I think you have to use it or renew it or lose it, because there's a permit renewal for 12 Franklin, I think, that just came in. So,
Mm.
Well,
so
that's
that, I mean, it's a good, you know, a good catalyst for this conversation, you know.
So, so with Acme, if they're not going to use it, are they?
Well, Acme's different, it was a full rezoning.
Oh,
It wasn't a
okay,
special
yeah,
permit.
Okay,
So
okay,
that's in the bag, so.
right. So your understanding is that with the special permit, that actually it does go away if they don't use it?
Or renewal.
Well, that's a good question. If it expires, then, you know, I don't know what the protocol is, you know, what the procedure is. You know, if it reverts back to the original, you know, without the text amendment, or they have to go through go through an ULURP again. I don't know.
Interesting. So we can ask city planning.
Yeah.
So, okay, I will,
I think it's a great question because you know, it happened so quickly after Acme that it begs the question of whether they knew that they weren't moving forward or had doubts about the project. And then obviously the difference of value that they received as a result of the rezoning is, is huge. So, I think then it would almost make it in the developer's best interest to try and get the rezoning, even if they're not sure that they're going to do it. And I don't, we don't want that to happen. So, even if it was as part of the process that, if we can find out that they need a renewal or there's some other part that needs to pass if it is that they're not doing it, but just to make sure that people are in earnest asking for rezonings for themselves and not for a transaction.
Okay,
Didn't
so
the
we can ask-
committee, I get with Acme, didn't we vote, because I voted against, I remember, but why did the committee, we vote in favor of the rezoning? I know the city planning would have done something, but we support Acme. The committee support Acme. So why we stand and make a statement, whatever, I know city planning would have approved anyway, but we didn't make a statement against about Acme. Right?
Well,
Why we talking
yeah,
now?
I don't think it was such an easy question. I think it was a tough question.
The
Vote was
press
23
brought
to
it.
10.
There are records on the press, so which I was against.
I
One
know.
of the few times I
Well,
was
Sylvia,
mentioning.
you weren't alone. The vote was 23 to 10.
Right.
So, but sometimes that's and I know there was
I'll be right
political
back. I have
support
to,
for that, the promise and the job and employment, whatever. But the reality is that I go there. I love Acme, but if Acme has to become another commercial, look what is happening now at 25 Kent. There is legal license, which I voted. I support one because they're not renting any space and it's not impacting anybody. But I'm saying that the problem is that place were supposed to be. Let's do not forget about. I know you're saying the same things, but let's do not go trick again. Then to support the next one because it's going to be another one in the meantime before all these ambitious change will happen. Most likely there's going to be some other request for rezoning somewhere else.
well, we can, I can reach out to DCP and find out, is there a time limit for the developer to actually start the development? Is there something that makes it so that they'd have to reapply, or is it just in perpetuity? So I can ask about that. So we have these. Are there other conditions that anyone else wants to add to this list? And I hope you all got this. I did send it out to everybody.
Del, did you see Corey's comments? Maybe we should
Yeah.
go through those.
Yeah,
No.
I apologize for the kind of before the bell emails that I sent
No,
out.
yeah.
Some of them are, reinforcing points that you had made, Del, but I wanted to add some additional color and a couple of ideas. If it's helpful, I can just kind of quickly go through it.
Yeah.
Cool. So the first one was, in terms of affordable housing, I would see if we could ask for more than 35%. I'm making an assumption as part of this that we are going to get pushback on it. So if we start at 35, we may, then be at 30 instead of, 35. And I also think there's a difference between when someone's asking for a rezoning. So I wasn't sure in your document whether you're saying 35% for all developments or 35% for rezoned developments that are, coming to us.
My understanding was that we decided that with big developments, we were going to be asking for 35% affordable whenever they came to us for some kind of a variance.
Got it. I mean,
obviously, if you have a very small development, you have five units, you know, not going to ask for 35%, but.
Yeah, can I react to that one?
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's a really great suggestion, Corey. thinking about the number, well, but two, the AMIs, really, making sure that those are, really deep enough, and the percentage of affordable housing. And what I want to emphasize is in the 2005 rezoning, there was a point of agreement between, the city, and the community, and the to provide 33% affordable housing through all the units that are created by the rezoning. And in 2019, when city planning provided an update, we're only at 15%. And but it was a split between private stock through private developments, and about 18% from city owned, and I feel seems like the overwhelming lion's share of it is coming from private developments. And so I think maybe, I don't know if it's something to follow up with city planning about with the city, hey, you owe us like you're short about 60% on affordable housing units, but I wonder if we need to try and make that up. We just know there's just an affordable housing crisis in the neighborhood. And so I think Corey being aggressive with these larger applications and building projects, because like as we asked for with River Ring, we asked for 50%, and then we ended up getting 35. That the extra was off site and still, I guess, to be found. But I think that's, I don't know, I just can't get that out of my mind, that the city is really, they're short on the parks they promised, and they're short on the housing that they promised also.
I think, Adam, you spoke to some people, didn't you? About where we were, how we're doing here with respect to the affordable that we're supposed to have.
I'm not quite sure I know what conversation you're referring to. Yeah, no, I'm not sure that I have.
Okay. I think, weren't you going to speak to, I can't think of his name right now. One of the people we were thinking of inviting to come down to speak to us.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I did not do that. Maybe that was. I'm trying to think of who it would have been. I remember talking about Asher from Antonio's office.
Yeah.
It could have been him, and I definitely can follow up with him. I'm sorry, I haven't done that yet.
Okay. Because I think that we do want to invite some people to come down and speak to us. As a matter of fact, we might want to ask DCP and some other people to come and speak to us at our next committee meeting about where we're at now with respect to the affordable housing that we were promised, and what is realistic to, what thoughts they have on what's realistic. Now, again, we don't have to, if they, for instance, if they came and said, oh, don't ask for 40%, it's not realistic, we don't have to abide by that. We can ask for whatever we want. But we did speak about, after going through some of these, just, I think last time we discussed the fact that we would compile the different policies and conditions that we've been putting forth, and then we could talk about what people do we want to start asking to come down to talk to us. So Corey, why don't you go with the rest of your comments? So you feel we should ask more than 35%?
Yeah, can I just quickly just say, in terms of, considering percentages and asking city planning, I think one of the things they'll say is that the mandatory inclusionary housing requirements, that's the floor. That's like the minimum that a developer is required to create. So they could definitely create more if they wanted to, 35, 50, 100.
Right.
If we, so we have, we can go there ourselves, I think.
Sure, absolutely.
Well, I think one question I have is whether you know, if we say 35, does that mean we get 35, or does that mean that that's what we're requesting? Because with 2 trees, the fact, you know, that they're doing the other 10% off-site doesn't actually address, you know, if you guys recall from River Ring, my concern is that you put in the most expensive rentals in the neighborhood in that level of concentration, and you automatically then, you know, raise the rent levels in the, you know, nearby to that site. And so to me, it's really important that in order to offset the effects of essentially gentrification that you get at those levels, that you know, are at a higher level. And so the 50% in my, you know, from my perspective, is not only something that, you know, we've seen in Queens and other areas that I think we should strive for, but it's also really from the perspective that, you know, if you're going to put in a 2-bedroom that costs $9,000 a month, you know, down the block, then that's going to have an effect on the immediate area. And the only way to mitigate that is to have a larger portion of them being affordable.
I agree. And I think it's really a shame that the city allowed them to have to meet the affordable requirement by putting it off site. And I feel very comfortable with saying we want X amount, X percentage, whether it's 35, 40, and we want it on site. Now, does that mean we're going to get it? Not necessarily. We didn't get it with River Ring, but if we can decide that that it's important for us to say that the affordability has to be on site. You know, the other thing they like to do is they'll tell the developer, oh, well, you can meet your requirement for affordability by rehabbing some apartments in a building that was already affordable, but the nonprofit that was managing it didn't, you know, somehow wasn't able to keep up with the management. So you can, you know, get your credits by rehabbing, which doesn't give us any more affordability. It's just rehabbing units that have already been affordable.
Well, in District 34, and you know, I don't want to belabor this because I think we all, for the most part, agree. But you know, they talk about preserving affordable housing, which is what which is what they're doing, arguably, with, you know, taking over smaller buildings that are, you know, maybe being mismanaged. But it's not the same as taking, you know, if you actually took 35% of River Ring, that it has much more of an impact than taking an apartment that, you know, was already $2,500 a month and finding new management for it. So, you know, I'm interested in preserving affordable housing and really continuing to think about it in terms of, you know, what is the impact of a new large luxury building and mitigating its, you know, the luxury effect that it has, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Yeah.
In terms of AMI, so to me, anything really above 80 AMI is, you know, you're getting to the average median income, which, you know, arguably people who are making the average median income also need help. But I think deeper levels of affordability, because through the Bloomberg era, a lot of the affordable housing that was built was, you know, 100 to 130 after they allowed it to be that high. So I think from what I've heard, and, you know, I don't know if Adam's still on the call, but the real need is in the deeper affordable, and then also including family apartments, so as opposed to studios and 1-bedrooms that really pushing for the 2 and 3s.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to say that the real need is in any particular one place. I think there's need, you know, across these levels. But yeah, I think it is probably fair to say that, like, the truly, like, desperate need is, you're going to find more of it at the lower levels of percentage of AMI. I do want to make one comment, sort of a meta comment on the conversation that we're having about, you know, the idea that we might approach one of these applications with sort of an ambitious demand to leave ourselves room to negotiate in the hopes of arriving at, you know, some other good number. And I guess I just wonder if we, as a group of people whose meetings are all available on YouTube, just don't have the ability to take advantage of a strategy like that. Like, somebody can look up this meeting and hear us talking about, oh, we'll start high and then we'll be comfortable agreeing to something lower. And so I wonder if the only real way that we can impose any leverage is just identifying, you know, one number that we're going to insist upon, and if it's above that, it's a yes, and if it's below that, it's a no. I just don't see how we can be very crafty in our negotiations in this sort of context.
I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
It's a point based on reality. Yeah.
We could also pass a resolution, you know, whereas we won't accept less than 50% affordable housing and certain AMIs and et cetera, environmental conditions, et cetera, just to make a big, bold statement.
Well, and I appreciate all of, Adam, because that was sort of my question. If we definitely got 35% going forward, then that would be better than where we are now. I would like to set the bar higher because, it's not my experience that we get what we ask for. And because ultimately that's how you set a new standard. 35 probably would have seemed ridiculous back in 2012, So it was more of a discussion point, but I appreciate your perspective of, them listening to us strategize right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is something we can discuss further when, by the way, I forgot to tell everyone, the reason that our committee members who are from the Hasidic community are not here is because this is a holiday. And when we got the, it's my sense that when we exchanged the meeting dates with the holidays, I don't think that we were aware that tonight was one of the holidays. And so I did promise that I promised them that I promised Isaac Sofer actually that I would let you all know that that's why they're not here tonight, not because they weren't interested. So I guess I'm comfortable with really standing strong at 35%. But again, I'm only one person, and we can hash this over, and we can actually come to we can vote on it if we want to. We can come to a resolution that at this point we have a hard and fast demand of X% of affordable. And I'm I do agree with Adam that I think we're more effective if we're just hard and fast. And also I would like to add to that it has to be on site, and that we don't just keep allowing them to just go to like Bushwick or another neighborhood, which I don't begrudge the other neighborhoods getting their affordable, but we need it here.
They can't.
For all of the
I think
reasons
it has to be the same community district, I think. So.
I know. I understand, but I still think we need it on site where these luxury apartment buildings are coming, in order to offset the effect that these purely market rate buildings will have and on the immediate area. I happen to agree with Corey that is an effect that you're going to have, and I would like to, but we can discuss it, Okay, we have a question here, Erin.
Hi, not a question. I just wanted to voice my support for the point that Corey's making in terms of the 50% affordable, as well as the AMI conversation. I think both of those points are really important. And I think that setting a high standard really forces a developer to come to the table with proposals that are going to work for the community and what we're fighting for. And I worry that if we do have it at a lower bar, we're not going to get what we need today, and we're not going to get what we need for the future. So I feel very strongly about those 2 points. I also agree with the comments in regards to the on-site affordability. I think that that's really important. And I would also say that it's a both and in regards to the rehabilitation of other units and buildings within the district. We should encourage developers to take a look at that. If these, companies are coming in with lots of money in their pockets, figuring out ways to enhance the housing infrastructure across the district, I think is also really important. So just adding that to the conversation.
Sure. Well, I think this is something we can talk about and discuss, and the committee can come to, you know, a consensus on what percentage we feel comfortable demanding, and whether we think that, let's say we demand 50%, and do we think that we're really just doing that to bargain, and we do expect the city will give less? Then, in addition to, then we have the question of, do we think that's a good way of going, or do we feel it's better to come up with something that is more realistic and then just play hardball and say that's it, that's our condition and that's it? And I think this is a discussion that is worth having. I don't think there's no mathematically right or wrong answer here. I think it's strategy. And
I agree with that, and I think that the only other comment I will say is that when we see districts across the city start doing this and having these, you know, more strong conditions in terms of what their community is going to accept, it changes the conversation, and it then, you know, developers will look to either the less strict areas, if you want to call it strict. I don't know what the, you know, language you want to use here is. But if District 33 mirrors District 34, I know the Long Island City District, I don't know, I think it's Queens 1, they've put forward some pretty strong statements in terms of, you know, or the council member, I should say at least, has put forward some pretty strong statements in terms of development projects that they want to see. If we can be a part of that conversation, we're creating that broad swath of demand for those districts, which I think is really important.
sure, are they actually requiring 50% affordable?
Queens 1, I don't think so, but I know that the Queens Innovation, the council member, came out in strong support of affordability and was able to get some good concessions. And I think, you know, it's a conversation that I think is naturally headed in that direction, and in certain districts, not all. I know I think it's Manhattan, the west side of Manhattan, Manhattan 4, I believe, is also putting together a pretty bold statement in terms of what they're interested in seeing in their community. I'm happy to see if they have something that's already been formally adopted and track that down and share it if it has been.
Right. I mean, maybe it is. Maybe, again, I think this is a valuable discussion. And if we can find that there are districts who are, even if they're not getting it, but they're really putting out that statement, and it's, whether it's 35%, 40, 45, 50%, it would be great if we have, you know, we have that knowledge. That would be helpful, you know.
And I just like to reemphasize that if we have the data to support it, and we have this point of agreement with 2005, you can just say, not only is it moral to get this more affordable housing and deeper AMI on site, but that's what you promised us in 2005, you know, when you rezoned our neighborhood. So.
Yeah, and we're not alone. Others are, you know, we're not alone here.
Also,
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say it bears sort of observing also that, like, the real leverage in this process does not come from the community board, right? Like, our vote is advisory, and we've seen projects that we have voted down go on to be approved. The ultimate veto really comes from as long as we have this vague policy of council member deference in effect, the real policy comes from the council member. And so probably, like, the more that we can do to actively coordinate our work with not only the local council member, but the borough president's office, and just sort of take a unified front on whatever demands we want to make, the more seriously we're probably going to be taken. And so that's another reason to sort of incorporate these other folks into our planning as we figure out exactly what we want our policies to be here, to see if we're going to be on the same page or not when the
Sure,
rubber meets the road.
sure.
To jump on that, Adam, I've spoken with Lincoln Ressler, pretty much every time I talked to him for the last 3 years, we talked about housing. And so he believes in 50%, and he said that many times that is the minimum of what we should be asking. Now, again, it's one of those questions and about, it seems to be asking for a lot, but I have heard it in a good amount of dialogue in Long Island City, in downtown Manhattan, and I think it's just a question of it continuing to come up to be the norm. And from, a negotiation perspective, and I can't remember the exact term for this, but it's basically setting your boundaries. So if you start and you say, that something is worth X, then all of a sudden that number is out there. So, I agree that it's a strategy that we have to come to determine, and I think that we're not going to decide tonight. But I can say that if we called Lincoln in, he would agree that 50% was what we should be looking for.
Well, he did come here and he was talking about 35%, but if he's willing to support a condition of 50%, that would be great to know.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk to him. I mean, ultimately, I think the question would be, these things are all negotiations, right? So it's like 50% is better than 35%, and I'm sure he would say that. Does that mean that in a particular, conversation or for whatever development you were talking about, that 35% was what he thought maybe we could get? Probably. But I know he believes in 50.
What about Jennifer? Did she have a number in her plan?
So it's funny, I actually misquoted because I was looking at hers earlier and I actually have it up. She does not, I think. She has 50% AMI and below, which I took to, because I looked at it, I thought she might have meant 50%. I think maybe in order to kind of, move on with the evening, I think we do a little more research and find out how common 50% is and whether or not we have the support of the electeds and what the rest of the community board thinks, or not community board, the rest of this committee.
Yes. And I do want to mention that I do think that although I think the real need, that we have a very big need for the lower AMIs, I do also think in terms of city planning, we should also accommodate people who are not able to afford the affordable, but who are not in the really low AMI. I mean, my feeling is for good city planning, you want a good mix of people. So you want middle-class people who, maybe teachers, doctors, and that, not doctors, but maybe teachers and just people, middle-class people who would not, who cannot qualify for the lower percentage AMI, but who certainly can't even dream of getting into a market rate. I think we need them in the neighborhood too. So I've always felt that we shouldn't just have only the very low AMI percentages, On the other hand, I'm not talking about 130% AMI either. So
No, I agree with you. I
silly.
think the question that I am asking, and my understanding was that because of Affordable New York, which I think came in, Steve, if you remember, I feel like it's like 2018 they passed Affordable New York, and then the 421A options changed, and I think we got a whole bunch of 130 and even like 100 to 130. So I think I'm just interested in what our current affordable housing supply is, and I think it is bulked on the higher AMIs. So it would be worth knowing what options are available in North Brooklyn and then trying to balance that out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We need to know what we really should be pushing for.
Yeah.
So were there any other comments you?
I did have some more, so I'll try and go faster through them. So one of them is, the next one is not something we've talked about, but I attended Emily Gallagher. She had a meeting last week about good cause and just the sort of rental crisis that we have. And I've talked to some of you guys about home ownership. So There are very few condos that have affordable housing, but it does exist. Torrin, which is in downtown Brooklyn, is one of them. So, you know, I just wanted to kind of let the rest of the committee know that that's an option for developers and to see if that was something that we could begin asking for, because 80% of our district, this came from Emily's meeting, or like 82%, they're renters. And because rents went up about 30% in the last year, we're really in a very difficult place. So I would love to encourage condos with affordable housing.
All right, well, you've gotten to a big sore spot with me, because some years ago, I tried to I encourage affordable ownership, affordable condos. I looked into it and saw that it was certainly something that was doable within developments, and it became political, and it was, I don't want to go into any details, but it was voted down. The project that I was trying to get the community to look at through the People's Firehouse, it was voted down. The People's Firehouse was going to be the nonprofit involved, and without saying more, I think I think it was such a shame that happened, and it's always been something that I've felt was really, really important, and it can be done.
Well, that's, you know, I think with that point, and, you know, I don't want to make it too long of a night, but,
So,
you know, if other committee members agree, I would just like to put it back on the map, because
I'd love to put it back on the map. I fought really hard for that one,
Cool.
and well,
Also,
I-
guys, if you know, that sounds great. One more comment, you know, I was going to mention before about any 50%, but then I don't know who said that. But something else is outside the scope really of our committee, but certainly not outside the scope of the community board, and not outside the scope of our public representative, of which a friend of mine lives on Milton Street. She's a parent coordinator for a public school. She makes very little money, to the point that she cannot afford to do shopping here extensively. So she got back to her old neighborhood in Jackson Heights. And so people has to literally shop outside the neighborhood. So what is the point of living in a neighbor where you cannot fully afford, right? And it's all linked. Restaurants are very expensive and probably all over the city, but certainly far more expensive here. So you live in a place where you don't even have a laundromat. And this is not an issue probably for the bigger building, or probably that comes with a laundromat, which is an amenity. But there are smaller buildings in the historic district where some they have rent control apartment, still these older people living around. And we have lost every laundromat in Greenpoint, I don't know, in Williamsburg. So there is so many layers to, you know, yes, it's affordable house, it's affordable unit, but it's an affordable community. And how do we control? Sometimes, you know, we do work about liquor license, but the proliferation of the liquor license, you know, you mentioned about retail diversity, but, you know, we should enforce that idea, like maybe with the state, you know, I mean, we have a founder food trigger law, and we have like 20 licenses, not 3 within 500 feet. That takes away the laundromat. We lost 3, 1 on Collier and 2 on Franklin already. So there is none. And older people had to travel away. I don't know. There is 1 on Manhattan Avenue by the church, the St. Anthony. I don't know, Steve, in Greenpoint, for example, there is any other on Manhattan Avenue, but soon it's not going to be none. And there is people who have affordable house, and they're in danger to lose this affordable house. They are, you know, in older and a smaller scale building, you know. So I wonder if this idea could be expanded to the board as a more holistic, I don't know, way to make different proposition.
well, it's an important question, and I think part of that picture is if we can somehow put pressure on the city to stick to its guns with making the affordable on site, because again, yes, the way it's happening now, they say, okay, it doesn't have to be on site, it can be somewhere in the district. However, what's happening then is that within the immediate vicinity of these developments, there isn't enough affordability to encourage the affordable, businesses that would actually service people who are in the more affordable units. And then, what kind of what conditions can we put to, is there some way we can require developers to give a certain percentage of affordable commercial space?
I mean, I wonder if the community rooms that we question could be affordable commercial spaces.
I know, those community, that was another thing that was in this condition,
Yeah.
questioning
Yeah.
the usefulness of these community rooms.
Good idea.
I mean, it's a difficult thing, I think, because, what would the application look like? Arguably you'd want it to go to a business that's getting displaced, that's been in the neighborhood for a long time, and offer them, affordable rent. I just mean in terms of, not trying to, invent new ideas on this call, but, I do find that it's helpful to, to discuss this, and Santi, absolutely, that's one of my issues with the luxury development, is that it's not, stores are renters. So in the same way that, you have this turnover with people getting displaced, you have businesses getting displaced. And as of right now, there's there's nothing that they can really do about it.
Yeah, and also it's kind of natural. I don't know. I speak Greenpoint, I know well, but now being also in the SLA committee, you have the picture how, like, for example, and those are business, nothing against having a legal license or a restaurant, but is the proliferation, and definitely that the one that can afford. They also count on the new development with a wealthy, definitely tenant. And so, when the landlord says, hey, hold on a second, I can make an extension in the backyard, then I have an open restaurant structure in the street. So there is this amplification of the footprint, and they said, oh, now it's $20,000 a month, and then you think that you go for a drink, it's $20 a drink, and you spend $150 minimum. I mean, this is not definitely what the people in the affordable unit will be able to afford, but even the applicant say, okay, we can risk, we will pay the $20,000 a month for a commercial space because we're going to target this. So it's kind of vicious cycle, and everything overlap. But also the industrial deal. I remember there was some comment from the borough president office last time, and I don't remember which meeting, was at all, that they care about the preservation of industrial space. And between a legal license that came to us, it was a venue, the SLA committee, and then the DOT, Joanna forwarded something from DOT with all the new open street, which is fine, is great when that is great. But then I looked, the first one, it was this one on Randolph Street from Scott Avenue to Gardner, which is a full M31, industrial area. There is even the Department of Sanitation, which is literally a 24 hours closed open street. And the Department of Transportation partner, it's a legal license with 20,000 square feet space. And there are several of them. So, this is create those precedent where we're going to lose also in the case. So it's not just the affordable house, it's the affordable industrial. So that's why I believe that this is an opportunity to what you, Karen, Corey, you were saying, maybe to make this like a bigger conversation for the board and to have it overlap probably on different area. Because I know this is not the competence of this committee, but it is indirectly, right? Because then we're going to have people wanting to change, and then we have the M31 space, and that is going to be another issue. But we care about this.
Yeah,
I agree. And
okay.
we give lip service to caring about our industrial space, and then we keep losing it to other kinds of developments.
Well, so I'm going to move to the next one, which was protecting the IBZ.
Yeah.
So in District 34, I believe it says that they will not rezone the business district to residential flat out. So, because this keeps coming up, I would be comfortable making a statement of that sort. But to Santi's point and to, the committee, how do we protect the IBZ? What statement do we want to make around that? And what statement do we maybe want to make on a broader level about our commercial spaces?
But the threat was that and zoning to allow more entertainment type of
Yeah.
businesses to encroach on the traditional industrial.
Well, that's like I think it was like my first meeting on the land use committee about hotels not really qualifying for the IBZ and them needing a special permit. So that's a discussion within itself, but I think it's really important that, we have a statement around businesses and protecting that zone.
Yeah, I mean, and how do we feel about these big entertainment, facilities? Is that okay? Do we want to replace our manufacturing with them?
I mean, it's funny. I was at the William Vale with my mom at brunch yesterday, and I like Luca. I will tell you all. I think it's just a question of, that's not the IBZ that we're looking for. But I do think there's a place for it. And I think at this point, it's just a question of where do we feel comfortable with an entertainment venue, which has its value and benefit to the community, but is a very different thing. It's sort of like, if you're trying to have more bananas, then, don't bring me blueberries because they're not the same thing.
But Corey, I believe probably what Dale pointed out, I mean, I have a bunch of printed paper liquor license application. There is one year like 1,500 people capacity, okay? 1,500 people. Now, in the industrial zoning M3 in the East Williamsburg, and of course, maybe you have sometime there's a few sporadic houses with people who lives there in a frame house, and there isn't really a community to complain to the point, like for example, an open street there in one of these venues. The Department of Transportation partner is actually a legal license, a business, which is like there isn't really a community to work, and you close the street, and the industrial businesses, they are there, they're not even complaining. I mean, they deal with the closure of the street. So it's not so much about the William Vale, it's these industrial places. They're getting new tenants, and they are tenants and not industrial. And I understand they don't have to manufacture on the M3 zoning, but do we need the craftsmen? There is still, like, I know craftsmen. I used to have an industrial space on Metropolitan. It became almost not affordable anymore. You need space. You have to leave if you do the job, or you cannot start the business again. You're not going to find a space for $2,500, $3,000 a month.
No, I agree with you, Sante, and I think what I'm trying to say is that there is a place for entertainment venues and hotels, and I appreciate them in their own right, but is that what we want in, the IBZ? And do we want to make any differentiation, and protection for areas so that that doesn't happen?
And I believe something important to ask, and I let speak Trina, because this never happened. We never had like our public representative with the state, because everybody says, oh, the New York State Liquor Authority, they give license to everybody. It's actually not true, because when me and the community, we went in front of the chair, there was a community that finally was there. It was denied. Like for example, now there is no 500-foot hearing in person anymore. So the lobby has completely won, because the community can only send a letter. So you cannot go in front of there. All the other hearings, they're all open with the city. And maybe asking our public representative to be more strong also with the state. Indirectly goes through the liquor license. So if if there is objection for our public representative, that's how we protect the space. The moment there isn't a venue going there because you don't get a legal license, it will have to become something else. without having to do special legislation, just doing the proper battle and statement that we have never done it, you know. That's all. Trina, so you.
No, my question was with 25 Kent, did they ever put in a tenant with affordable manufacturing? Remember, that was the big fight, that 17% of that building was going to be manufacturing, but it was going to be affordable manufacturing that someone like Evergreen was going to help fulfill, or there was going to be monitoring.
That's Kith, the clothing company.
They're
Upstairs,
upscale.
I could be
Yes.
wrong. I thought that's who that they were a light manufacturing tenant, but
and then the ground floor has been hired with bad administration, but the Lobster Place with a new restaurant is coming on the ground floor, just across the street from Bushwick Inlet Park. So.
No, but at 25 Kent, it was specifically supposed to be affordable, and Kith is kind of a high-end clothing manufacturer. I bet they never put the affordable, that was never followed through.
And now the target is retail, right? The target is retail only. So we're some of these industrial space, we're supposed to be industrial manufacturing on the ground floor, a mix of retail. So what is the mix? What is the ratio? Sorry, Steve, I didn't want to, you were saying.
no, it's okay. I was saying, I don't think there's any stipulations about offering, you know, affordable commercial rent. I think they made some, you know, half-assed verbal commitment that they would try and do it, but it would be based on market, you know, market rates. So.
Actually, I'm remembering that. I think that we tried to put it, we maybe put it in our stipulation, but it wasn't part of what ended up.
Well,
You
so
have something else, Corey?
I did. I'll try and get through this. So resiliency concerns. So in light of the Army Corps proposal, you know, is it possible through the 2005 rezoning area that we could make a recommendation for a soft-edged waterfront? So kind of the promenades are more environmentally, you know, I guess that they are aware of global warming and aware of sea level rise, and that we're actually revising what we are putting out there so that it can actually absorb the water. I mean, is that something that we can talk about?
I don't know. I don't know what's going on now. With Steve,
I
you
feel like
might,
almost everything there is as of right builds.
Yeah.
I feel like if the Army Corps plan actually goes through and they force their hand, then they might, you know, redesign, rebuild some of those waterfront spaces. But I know the developers will probably, you know, kick back on that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the being at the meeting last week with Friends of Bushwick Inlet Park and listening to Willis and, you know, Trina and Steve, we were talking, you know, it's a question about resiliency, and, you know, it obviously came up in the landmarks part of this discussion about the backyard there. And so, you know, I'm wondering if there's the possibility of adding resiliency to our proposal, and, you know, maybe it's just a recommendation, but a consideration for, you know, open space and for the ability for rainwater to be absorbed, because it's not just an issue on the waterfront. It's obviously an issue, you know, with every, you know, large scale rain event. But I think that, yeah, whatever is possible to do there, I would like to see some notation of it. Okay, next. And this is kind of, this is about transportation. So, you know, Dell, you had mentioned in your conditions that the developer could take some burden for parks or infrastructure when they're, you know, a larger scale. And I'm not really sure how a developer can do that with transportation, you know, unless they, you know, bring their own boats.
maybe they can. Maybe they can contribute to the maintenance of the street. So maybe they can contribute to the ferries.
Yeah, because One Java, they're responsible for the India Street Ferry pier.
Okay.
So,
yeah, I mean, I think I was unsure how that would look. So I appreciate these options. one thing I noticed in District 34's plan is that it said that they wanted to be proactive and intentional about how and where development happens. And, I look at that and I think there are certain areas of our community that are, already too dense, and that there could be a certain cap on how many new units we will accept. And maybe it's how many new units we will accept without a plan as to how people are to get in and out. But, I think that we're, and we've talked about this, but we're lacking a larger land use plan. And, there's only so many people that the L train and the ferries can hold, and how much the streets can carry. And, I'm going to dovetail this into the next thing, which, is something that Willis had said at the Friends of Bushwick and Let Park meeting, which I thought was really powerful. But, he basically said that the community boards are being pitted against affordable housing on every other concern that we have. So, even if we got to a development that is offering 50% affordable housing, is that necessarily the best development for, let's take 40 Quay, which, I think is best used as a sponge to, take in the East River in the event of, the next big storm. So, I think that we as a community board are, consistently in this place where if we say no to a development that has affordable housing, we somehow are not, supporting the environment. We're not supporting our transportation. We're not supporting, a lot of our other initiatives. And I don't think that we should be pitted against in that way. So for this, I think it's just putting forth a variety of issues, with affordable housing being the most important one, but not at odds with other objectives that our community has.
Well, I would just say that those of us who were opposing river rings, we're talking about all these things. And
Oh, yeah, no, I think you guys, know me and my opinion on that site. And this, for me, is looking at it and saying, how can we not be in that situation again? And is there the ability to put forth conditions that will, will put us in a better situation going into it as to what a holistic planning for our neighborhood looks like, and that our waterfront and our resiliency shouldn't be, at odds with something else. It's something that's very important to us. So how to just set us up better for future proposals.
I would love to hear some thoughts on that, because frankly, I don't know what to tell you. I felt personally, my property value will probably go up considerably because of river ring, and I still think that the bottom line is it's going to be devastating for affordability and the infrastructure needs of this community. And I don't know. I hope I'm feeling pretty defeated on this right now. So maybe other members of the committee can give me some hope. But I felt that politically that I still don't think it was in the best interest of the North Side and this particular community. And I hope I'm wrong.
And we're seeing it all over again with 40 Quay. They're marketing departments for the developer that have a particular strategy that really pit the different parts of the community against each other. And they're getting set up, and 40 Quay will probably be the next big project to come through, big ULURP project. And we're going to see the same thing that happened with River Ring all over again.
Well, and that's why I know, Trina, this is your last meeting, but that's why I joined the full community board, because that meeting broke my heart. But it passed, and I felt that, I may not, I'm gonna look at that building and my property value will go up, as you said. But there are other developments to come. And, obviously if you're here on this Zoom at 8:48 and you have so many Zooms that you've been on, it's because you care. And I view this list of conditions as our best opportunity to put forth and set standards. And, we don't set the standards, we're advisory, but, I think if there's a way in which we can set forth these conditions to make sure that one condition doesn't become, more important, that it is, that these are the things that are very important to us, and we will not, we will not budge on them. I mean, I'm not sure, I'm spitballing right now, but
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know if I totally agree. I mean, obviously, we are an advisory, body, but depending on the project, we can have quite an impact. And even though Rivering and it passed, the board unanimously approved the conditions.
yeah,
And we didn't get 50% affordable housing, and it wasn't on site, but we got additional affordable housing. They rented the One South First units that were
Yep,
vacant for like
they
2
did.
years. They were supposed to be helping with Bushwick Inlet Park. That's a little bit in limbo right now, but at least initially that's what they were going to do. So, but I was demoralized by just kind of, they're almost ignoring the environmental impact statement, like Del, what you referred to. Just the numbers were really scary about, subway capacity
Yeah.
and the traffic, et cetera. And, just one, former politician said there'll be a marginal increase in subway usage and so forth. That was just,
It's absurd, it's just absurd. It's like when developers come and show us, I don't know where they get these pictures from, and show us that parking is not an issue. There's no issue with parking, and we live here and we know that the parking spaces are completely taken up all the time. And we know we're here, and some of these things just make certain, so much sense. We know that there's going to be tremendous strain on the infrastructure. We know that there are going to be problems, and I feel very strongly that we should push really hard to have developers contribute to pick up the slack and financial slack and of the burden that they're going to cause. And
Do you think, knowing that 40 Quay is nearly upon us, it makes sense to come out in front and move quickly and get some of these conditions ratified by the board, so that it's known before they bring it to us? I guess they haven't had their EIS yet, so it's
well, because I think, in my personal opinion, it goes way beyond our policy. I think it's whether the project should happen at all.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's just like Rivering was a huge bone that was thrown to certain, to segments of the community. And I don't know, I feel like that, I mean, it's so over the top in terms of the impact that project will have, assuming it's built. To have another one in Greenpoint where there are 4 towers going up across the street and like 12 more, beyond that, it's just insane. It's just really insane. Yeah. And I think Willis's point was just pitting different groups, different important needs against one another.
I agree, and that was really that broke my heart, frankly. It broke my heart to see that happen.
Well, so I guess in terms of transportation, going back to that point, I would like to see that there's a limit to areas, and arguably I am speaking about, Kent Avenue and Greenpoint on Franklin, because there's just too many developments on a one-way street. And I think it makes sense that it's not, it's, to me, to say to someone, yeah, you can build there, but you can, if we're going to approve a rezoning, we're only approving a certain amount of units. And, if that's, let's say, 20-story building and 200 units, and I don't want this on Quay, but just making this point, like Rivering didn't need to be so big. It only got so big because they were like, oh, well, if you don't make it, 1 million units, then we can't offer you, 3,000 affordable, right?
And the why, and frankly, it broke my heart that the community wasn't able to just get together and say, you know what, that's absurd, that's nonsense. You give us those affordable units, you give us the why, and you take some of that height away because you're making enough, and that's it. But
That's what our conditions were. Our conditions were
I
reduced.
know, I know, I know, I know.
Yes, but
The
I
but
actually
conditions
thought
are
we
to
did a
get in
decent
front of
job.
it to the degree we can. And I mean, I do think with 40 Quay, whenever you're the first message out in the room, you know, that sets people's opinion of it, you know, and I know the activist community has been pretty vocal about it, but I don't know how much the broader community and getting ahead of it from an affordable housing perspective, you know, is important. You know, what can we learn from River Ring, and how can we use this meeting and, you know, our conversation with the rest of the committee to put something together that is stronger. And we do have Lincoln, which, you know, Steve was on his way out at that point, and I think that our conditions would have meant more if he hadn't been. So, you know, we just have to, I think, do what we can to make a more balanced proposal of conditions that, you know, with affordable housing as the first thing, but not at odds of others. And then, you know, at 40 Quay is probably a separate powwow. Um, but we'll invite you, Trina.
So I don't really know a lot about 40 Quay. Can we discuss this in detail next time at our next committee meeting, and maybe discuss some of the discuss ideas of what we might want to require or request?
I'd be happy to do that, Steve.
I'm not building it.
Yeah. All right.
I mean, I'm like with Steve, not building it, and I believe that's
That's
what
fine. That's fine. Let's discuss, and that may be the answer. And you know, although there were some people from Greenpoint who were inclined to be in favor of River Ring because of the promise of the Y, maybe this time around we can try not to get so easily divided and at each other's throats, and maybe we can try to work, you know, as a more
The
solid.
problem is going to be the Monitor Museum. That's going to, because they're promising to build the Monitor Museum, and that.
Oh,
that's
see, there
going
you
to be
go. So now we'll give them anything, so they'll build the damn Monitor Museum, you know? And I think the Monitor Museum is a great project, by the way. And I you know, but, all right, so let's discuss it.
Something else I want to say, Dale,
Yeah.
before you close that, to tap into what Corey was saying, you know, and of course it can be, you know, I always felt uncomfortable. It's all about the affordable house, whatever it is, you know, architecturally, urbanistically, the building need to function properly. It's an organism, right? So even the idea that we imagine that there is a development and there is zero parking space, like let's put a couple of affordable houses more, is not really realistic. Maybe in the future, the plan could be there are some parking space, but they only can be for electric cars. Maybe somebody is wealthier, is going to have a car anyway. That is with a garage in the building, that is going to pay another place somewhere else where there are parking space. Who is going to be penalized is the one that doesn't have all the money, is in an affordable unit if there is one, and he's going to need the car because maybe, you know, and I have friends that children, they need the car at a certain point to go to the Rockaway, to the beach. And, you know, I mean, do we imagine it's easy for a mother with 2 kids moving around? It's not, you know, there are.
No, I agree with you.
You know,
let's through the poor people, you know, we'll put in fewer parking spaces. It'll be all electric, and gee, and the wealthy people will once again benefit and triumph.
You know, I know people that never went in vacation, and the only place an old car that costs like a couple $1,000 allowed them to go, I don't know, somewhere else to the beach in the summer, cross the bridge with the kids, and do these very simple little things that you can do with public transportation. Still is affordable. You know, if you don't have like assets, you know, you can pay a couple $100 to have a car insurance. I know it's environmental, it's an issue, but we need to recognize the reality. And I believe this is, I don't know, I believe parking and building.
I personally agree with you. I do.
Because I heard before, let's remove every possible parking space, but maybe being electric for electric cars. So if you are the wealthy one, and I don't know, maybe you should buy an electric car so you don't have impact on the environment.
Well, I think, Sante, what you said about each building being its own organism and how that organism fits into the greater neighborhood. And just, that we're looking at each project from a holistic approach of how it, relates to what is in our neighborhood. And these are our policies and this is what our principles are. But not just looking at any one point because that, doesn't create a good whole.
See, one of my big concerns is that unless we can somehow get more affordability within this neighborhood, then the holistic approach will wind up down the road being, well, this is a neighborhood of wealthy people, so we don't have to worry about, people.
Well, that's what we got on River Ring. It was like gentrification had happened, so what do you need it for? And I was like, no, there's an issue. Like we haven't jumped the whale.
Just displace all of the people who can't afford it. Then they're not here anymore. You don't have to worry about them. That's how I felt about Rivering. Well, we'll just
I know.
They'll be gone. We don't have to worry about them anymore.
There were people that said that. There were people that was their testimony.
Yeah, no, I know.
They did say that.
It was.
Let this area just have the wealthy people, and the other people can be displaced to other areas, and then the other areas can demand that they have more affordability. I mean, they said that. They literally testified to that.
Yep.
I know. And it's like my neighbors across the hall. There's so many people that I know in my building that can't afford this next rent hike, and arguably we are the, wealthy people, but rents are going from, $6,000 a month for a 2-bedroom to $7,500 and they can't afford that. And that's a reality that, really is, partly a product of One South First. I mean, it's partly what's going on in the, in the city in general, but it's absolutely that will continue to happen. There's not a point at which you don't have people getting displaced because much more expensive housing comes in.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So listen, I'm just wondering, are we ready to invite people to come to our meeting, or are we still at the stage where we just want to discuss this stuff among ourselves?
Looking back at all those years, looking back at all the committee reports, we've been having this discussion for so long that we've got to.
Yes.
I think it would be useful to clarify how to, what would be the most constructive use of these conditions and principles. So I would say moving to the next stage. And, at that point, we can, I'm happy to sort of summarize this if it would be helpful for the rest of the committee before the next meeting, so that everyone, is sort of on the same page and paying attention. And then if they have comments that they want to add, then, we have a constructive discussion.
Okay. So is it premature to ask any of our officials or, some outsiders to come in and join us at the next committee meeting?
I think it would be great. I just hope I don't have my baby before that meeting and I will be there.
Come on,
it's not due yet, so that should be my last.
You'll just have to be here. It doesn't matter.
I mean, the problem is there's so many committee members that just don't show up.
Well, again, I just want to remind you, there's a whole segment of the people who didn't come tonight for
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I know
that reason. But there are a couple of people that well, actually, there aren't too many now that have not shown up for a long time. Just maybe 1 or 2 people, and then I can ask Dialis to take them off. But if we were to invite anybody next month, is there a wish list? Does anybody have any thoughts?
I would just say, if not, I think it'd be great just to have that housing data from city planning or HPD, or, just to see how many units have been built, like over the last 10, 15 years.
What AMIs?
And how many are affordable, and what the AMIs were for those.
I'd also love to know the concentration of new housing, from a transportation.
Concentration of what?
Concentration of new housing. So how much has been built and where has it been built? From a transportation perspective. And then the other question was, what are other community boards asking for? You know, is 50%, you know, the new norm, or
Do you want me to invite city planning to our next meeting?
if you think that, I'm not sure who is the right, if it's them or if it's.
Yeah, I just don't feel like we should ask, you know, the other levels of an ULURP, you know, what they think we should ask for. I feel like I think
No,
I
I
think we
think
can
it's
figure
just
that
a
out.
matter, it's just to get them to, so you're asking for how many units, affordable units have been built and what's the AMI for the last how many years?
Yeah, well, how many total units, and
Yeah.
then how many of those were affordable? And
Okay.
then,
What
and then you what the
AMI?
AMIs,
2005, Steve?
For the last how many years?
well, ideally be 50, like since 2005, if they can. If not, I would say, I don't know.
Because I can ask them if they could have someone if they can either just give us this information or if they would
Mhm.
want to come to the committee meeting and talk to us about it.
Yeah,
I mean, I was thinking of it just as data that we'd have prior to the meeting, because that would help instruct us on.
All right, so I'll ask them the question about the special permit. Is it time limited? Does it time out?
Yeah.
And then how many, I guess we're talking about residential units
Yeah.
built and AMI since 2005, and how many and percentage of affordable.
well, also I say if 12 Franklin has to come back to the board to get their permit renewed, you know, what do we want?
Mhm.
Is it just a straight, can we renew it, or is that built into that is how can we shape it, change it?
Good question. That's another good question.
That's a question, I guess, for city planning too.
This is for 12 Franklin?
They're one of the IBAIs, and they have to come back,
I
I
think
guess.
they were the first one after 25 Kent.
Yeah, I have them here.
So we'll find out if it's time limited and what do you want me to ask them about 12 Franklin though?
Yeah, just what happens if they don't renew their special permit?
So does this mean it's time, it's only for a certain time and they have to come and renew
Well,
it?
that's what we
For
were talking,
October
yeah, like,
2018, they came before the board.
yeah. Like, do they, in order for the permit not, you know, do they need their certificate of occupancy for them to lock in the special permit without renewals? Because remember, I think 77 Commercial came through at one point because they hadn't built yet for their special permit.
So must they renew it and what happens
right.
if they don't?
Yeah.
Right, and 12 Franklin was for a 7-story. And they got a reduction of parking.
All right. I'll write a letter and ask Joanna. Is that, Joanna, can I write the letter? Can I draft a letter and then ask you to send it to city planning?
Yes, you can.
Great. All right. I think we should call it a night. It's after 9.
Well, I got in touch with Jerry because I also wrote to the law department, and he says that the motion fell. If it's a
It
tie,
failed.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my understanding. That's my understanding.
The suggestion was that if we could call LPC and ask them for more time, since this item is not on the clock for the next meeting.
I think, you know what, they wanted to be in the last meeting. And then remember they came to the full board and they thought that they had done their thing.
Yes.
And it was on the calendar last month. And so I don't know whether they're going to be willing to extend it again. Because in their mind, they extended it once already. But we can try.
I don't know. I mean, you can, or thank you, Joanna. My feeling is, why don't we just put it to the full board?
Agreed. I can present what happened at the meeting.
Right.
We can then
I think that's fair.
resolution can rise up, and then we can vote vote on it, vote it down, but whatever.
Exactly. Let's, you know, yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Good night,
And,
everybody.
Thank you. It was good.
Corey, have a
good
wonderful wonderful birth if it happens before.
I know Corey.
Yeah, so I'll if I give birth and I'm not here, then you know, wish me well. Otherwise, I'll be here and chatty.
I wish
Thank
you
you
well.
all
You're
for
the
listening.
If you
prettiest,
have your baby
prettiest
then.
pregnant woman.
What?
You look so beautiful, and you
Oh,
you don't
thank
even
you.
look pregnant. Look at how great she looks.
Well, you know, I don't actually, hold on. No, wait, I'm not sure.
No, but no, you look great.
Thank you guys.
That's
Well,
so
I
good.
appreciate you all. Trina, thank you for your service. Everyone, have a wonderful
Yes,
night.
Trina, we love you.
Have a great night.
I'll be back.
Thank
I
you,
promise
Trina.
I'll be back.
Good
Take care.
night.
Okay.
Good night.
Everyone, bye.
Good night.